Hi.
How
Hi,
are
Elatia.
you?
Hi, everyone.
I am so thrilled to have you here and to have you joining this amazing conversation. So for those of you who have not met Dr. John Amaral yet, he is a phenomenal human and happens to be an energy practitioner, an author, an educator. He works with A-list celebrities, entrepreneurs, athletes, influencers, and thought leaders. He's worked on thousands of people from over 60 countries around the world utilizing these energetic approaches that he's developed to help them feel and perform their best. He's been working with Tony Robbins since 2006. If any of you have seen the Goop Labs documentary series on Netflix, his work is featured there, and he's been all over the world a million 100 times, including the World Economic Summit at Davos. So with that, John, welcome to Thriving in Uncertainty today. I'm thrilled to have you.
It's great to be here. Thank you for having me. And I'm looking forward to our discussion.
Yes, the discussion all about, so we titled your conversation, it's kind of weird as we move into this because it's a conversation, but we kind of want to give people some context in terms of what we're talking about. Energy and the reality of your business. And you and I have exchanged some thoughts on this. And I just want to open this up for those who might not be familiar with your work yet, to help us understand what energy is and what it does in the world around us and why it's so important at a time like this.
Well, essentially, my background, I started out as a chiropractor over 25 years ago. And I've been working with people, whether it's athletes, entrepreneurs. I started working with a lot of people in the entertainment industry. I started working with a lot of like super high performers, including a lot of, whether it would be hedge fund managers, whether it was entrepreneurs or CEOs that were having hundreds or thousands of people under them or working with them, however you want to look at it. But that they were in charge, running things, having to make really difficult decisions. Going through health challenges, seeing where things break down, where they get physical symptoms, how stress affects them. And so I just have a very kind of rich background in navigating people through very challenging times. And so uncertainty has a huge impact on our nervous system and our brain. And when we're in high uncertainty, we typically get into a more vigilant fight or flight kind of state. And when we understand that energy is really, well, in physics, it's the ability to do work, right? But we really don't know what energy is. I mean, physicists don't, we know there's like the universe is made of energy. Everything is made of energy. Right. At the subatomic level, the entire existence of every bit of matter that exists, everything is all energy. But we really don't know exactly what energy is, but it is the currency of life. It is the currency of manifestation of anything. Like you need a certain amount of energy to create something. And if you lose too much energy, a living system dies. If you don't put energy into something, even if it's if it's in real estate, if you don't paint the building and you don't, take care of the grounds and you don't fix the rot, etc., things break down and things go into less organization and more decay. So energy really, it takes energy to keep things organized and structured. Without enough energy, things fall apart. That's entropy in physics. And so whether it's the human body or whether it's some factor in our lives that, like, whether it's our business, our relationships with our coworkers, whatever it is, it all takes a certain amount of energy, and there's a certain balance of energy that's needed for things to thrive. And then without enough energy or without utilization of the energy that's around us, because there's more energy available really at any time than we could ever use. The amount of energy that hits the earth from the sun in a couple minutes exceeds what we use in an entire year. So how are we using this energy and how effectively will determine whether things grow or break down, no matter what the other circumstances are. Energy is a key factor. It is the number one factor in how everything is organized and created.
Yeah, and one of the things that you talk about in terms of energy, and particularly as you're working with a lot of these folks who are high performers and people working with you, in addition to wanting to feel better, there's an element of showing up better, performing better. And one of the things that you talk about that I think is a useful concept for people to understand is they're thinking in terms of their own businesses, in terms of how they can move through the next 6, 12, 18, 24 months, is this concept of sort of the distinct kinds of energy, whether you're energy poor, energy neutral, energy rich. So like, can you explain what that is and how we can think about it in terms of just our being and then of course our businesses?
Sure. Like that distinction of energy poor, energy neutral, and energy rich came out of a amazing practitioner mentor of mine for many years, a man named Donnie Epstein, and he had defined, like, I mean, this goes all the way back to like the physicist, the biochemist, Nobel Prize winner Ilya Prigogine, who was looking at how living systems organize and utilize energy, looking at how chemical reactions utilize energy. We know that when energy is in a low availability, or too much energy is dissipated, too much energy is released, a system cannot maintain its existing like order. So for an example, if you burn a piece of wood, the piece of wood will break down because you release all this energy, and thermal energy comes out as heat, but then the structure of the wood breaks down into ash. It's less organized, it's less useful to build something with you because there's less energy in it, right?
Right.
So when a human body gets sick, or an organization is in a low energy state, there's not enough capital, there's not enough cash flow, there's not enough of something, then you go into contraction, and then you're trying to survive. And if there's not enough energy, or an infusion of energy that's brought in, it will break down and things will die. If it's a living system, it'll eventually die. If it's a business, it'll die.
Hold on, I don't want to lose this point, because you just said something that's super critical here. You said whether, when we're energy poor, we start to contract, and you said if there's not enough of something, meaning cash flow or opportunity, which sounds like a lot of people's businesses right now, things will fizzle and die. So although that contraction's it sounds like the instinctual action.
Yes, right. It's not, so you're not doomed for it to happen, because really it's about the inner resourcefulness. It's about how do we access and cultivate the energy to create, even when the external circumstances are challenging and it feels like there's not enough, or there's literally not enough. How do we navigate this, right? How do we navigate the uncertainty of where are we going to get the resources? Well, we know that every breakthrough, every innovation, every adaptation, every genius that happens, it's always from a super high energy state. It's always from a place where we feel in flow, we feel connected, and we're in this creative part of the mind. And so the relationship between energy and like a low state where we're in breakdown, a low state, we're always in reaction, we're in fight or flight, we're in protection, we're binding up or holding, and we're literally, our bodies hold, they contract.
Right.
And so in those states, we're not resourceful, and we can't even access the parts of our brain that would allow us to think and create from higher consciousness. Because when you're in fight or flight, you have blood flow and oxygen goes away from the frontal and prefrontal cortex. It goes into the limbic brain, where we're dealing with like the lion's, breath on our, back of our neck, versus being able to assess our surroundings and hear that lion roaring, 5 miles off in the distance, and going, maybe I'll course correct. So when these things come upon us where we're like, oh no, we go into reaction. If we stay in that state for too long, then we can start to go energy poor, because we're all bound up. We're holding all the energy. It's not that we don't have enough energy. It's just we are binding it and holding it up, so we don't have it available. Right. So that's energy poor.
So how do you move from that into the next phase? Because I have a feeling that a lot of people have been in that phase for 8 weeks or more as this has unfolded.
Well, I think so. So the next level is like neutral. Neutral is just like is you have enough energy to sustain. You're not breaking down, but you're not growing or innovating or adapting. You're just like trying to tread water. So you have enough energy to just it's like someone treading water. At a certain point, they might run out of energy, they run out of calories, they can't do it anymore, their muscles are fatiguing and they sink, right? So but it's like you're indefinitely treading water when you're in this neutral state. You have enough energy, but you can't make any progress toward the shore. You're just holding your position.
Right.
And so that's kind of what I see, like the PPP program and the stimulus, like all these things that the government's trying to do, just try to keep it as neutral as possible, so the whole thing doesn't just like collapse. So,
Yeah.
so what we can really recognize is the culture actually start, just the infrastructure around us and everything is like trying to maintain some sense of neutral.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I mean, that's it's good. You need a certain amount of neutrality to just keep things at a certain level, because at the very least, you could try to sustain the system, but that will not ever create growth. Like, you need more energy and you need more availability of energy to grow to the next level. So we got to have, I think the thing here is, how do we get into a more energy rich, a more creative state in the midst of a time when the whole world around us is like, kind of like, oh, just barely trying to stay neutral.
Yeah, and I think particularly so, I love that you referenced the PPP loan and how this is kind of something that keeps us at neutrality. I've been in a lot of conversations with fellow entrepreneurs these last few weeks, and that neutrality feels like it lasts until about the 4-week point, because it's an 8-week loan that you're supposed to be paying out over 8 weeks for payroll. So you feel that relief for the first few weeks because you've got some breathing room, and then it starts to, it's exactly like you were talking about, you start to move from neutral to energy poor or negative, because you're like, uh-oh, now what? You miss the opportunity for creative growth, as you're saying.
Yes. And so this is why it's so critical that everyone's doing the inner work right now and doing whatever practices, and we could talk about that, you know, in a moment, but what are the things that we can do to shift our physiology, help our brain and body function at a more energy rich state, so that we're actually in the midst of all of this, we're actually staying innovative and creative and adaptive, that we're staying more fluid. And that is basically, this goes to the work of people like Csikszentmihalyi on his work on flow states and flow, that we know it as like when athletes are in the zone. We know it from anyone who's, you know, successful in any area of life, knows that when you're in sync with your body, you're one in a way with the moment. You're creating from a place of sort of this knowing, effortlessness, and you have a sort of almost feels like an inexhaustible supply of energy. There's like no friction, no resistance, that things happen beautifully. Like, we're in sync with the timing of things around us. Things happen easily. We just think a thought and it sort of manifests. So that's the key is getting into accessing and sustaining states that are allowing us to stay in that flow state. And what happens is that we in that flow state, because we're not in reaction and we're not just trying to stay neutral, we're not reacting to the environment around us. It's just saying, how are we going to make it through? How are we going to get through this? How are we going to just keep the boat from sinking? We're like already in creativity about how we're moving forward. We're seeing the vision of the future. We're starting to get downloads and we're getting information, because our nervous system and our brain is now in this high state where possibility and limitlessness exists, not in the how do I just make it through this next moment. And the challenge for everyone, I think, right now, who especially are in businesses that are still closed up, they can't operate in any way, shape, or form how they need to be to remain solvent in some cases. How do you navigate this right now? Because it's coming from all angles. So we could talk a little bit about that if you'd like.
Yeah, I'm really curious about that, because, and you and I have also spoken a little bit about this, there's a distinction between, so by the way, for everybody whose business, whether your business is still here, it's barely hanging on, if you've already closed the doors, like that, you've even made it today for a lot, like this is victory. So there's that. And there's also, though, a distinction. So as you've made it through to today, a lot of people have been forcing their way through. Like, I can just get through the end of this week, or get through here, or we can just make it that far, then everything's going to be okay. But that doesn't feel, particularly as you're explaining all of these, the different distinctions in energy, that doesn't feel very sustainable. So how do you move from forcing through or pushing into the access of what you're what you're talking about here?
I mean, what I think number one is that we have to recognize the timing of the culture, of the world, of the universe, what's happening right now. There are forces, you know, sort of at work that are a little bit, they're larger than us. Nobody really knows exactly, you know, how this is going to all unfold. So we have to realize there's this kind of great pause that has happened that none of us really have full control over, or very little control over. So we have to realize, like, if you're trying to push and make things happen, you're trying to transform and create and move forward and make things work and trying to schedule things and put it together, and it's not the timing for it, it's just going to be effort and you're going to suffer. So what can we do? I think it's recognizing, okay, what can we do that's in sync with the timing? Okay, how can we be preparing? How can we be innovating? How can we be evaluating with a high uncertainty, not knowing exactly what it's going to look like, but but if we get ourselves into states, whether we're meditating, we're working out, or not whether, but I think we all need to be in some way meditating, asking for guidance.
For practical tips, everybody.
Right. Working out and making sure our physical bodies are staying, you know, vital, eating quality food right now, hydrating ourselves, and actually acknowledging that we're in this pause. We have resourcefulness. If we connect to the rhythms of our bodies, we get the sleep, you know, we get as much sleep as we can, we get outside, get some sun on our face, you know, we walk and move our bodies. We really look to take care of our energy, of our vessel, of our body, then we're going to stay in a higher energy state, which allows us to be more receptive. It allows us to be more responsive. It allows us to adapt to what's going on more easily. And we unhook too from the just barrage of negative, sort of fear-inducing news that's just constantly, you know, showing us, you know, what's happening and how it's breaking down and what's wrong. And we start to, like, you know, we start to carve out in a very, very conscious way the way we want to proceed, like as an individual, as a human, how we want to approach the world. Then we will be so much more resourceful in our approach to everything that we do. But if we just are sort of in reaction and we're pushing and we're trying to sort of make things happen, even though maybe we can't, like, maybe there's some, you know, there's stay-at-home orders or restrictions on what business can open, and you literally cannot, let's say, change that for another 4 weeks or whatever it is. The harder you work to try to push something and just battle against it, unless you want to get out into the streets, and then some people are doing that and having, you know, protests and everything else. So it depends on, do you feel compelled to go out and do that, or do you feel compelled to do the inner work and just go, okay, this is what I need to be focusing on to make progress, even if it doesn't look like a lot of actions happen in the outer world, that I'm preparing. It's kind of like Nelson Mandela, that was, you know, preparing for so long, because he knew once he got out, if he got out of, you know, prison, he was going to, you know, get to work. So how are we preparing right now, instead of going into just reaction and waiting and getting this energy neutral support, just trying to sustain? How do we build without necessarily being able to take action in the outer world? And I think, like, everything is created first in the mind, right? In our consciousness. So what are you creating in your consciousness right now? Are you in reaction, or are you in a creation mode? And to be in that creation mode, you have to have enough energy and enough awareness to be in a high enough state that what you're creating in your mind and in your consciousness can manifest at a high level.
Right. And as we're moving through here, I want to make sure if anybody has any questions, please do add them here in the chat bar or in the Q&A. There's so much that you said inside of this, John, that I don't feel like I want to grab onto all of it. One word in particular that you said was this choice, that at the moment, even though there are some things outside of our control right now, and there will be over the coming months, things will, I'm calling it like an accordion kind of movement. Things are going to open, things are going to close, things are going to be more restricted, less restricted. And we don't have much choice over that, at least at the moment, but you're saying that there is a moment, or that there is a place of choice here. So as we're thinking about strategy, that feels like one of the most important, if not the most, is just realizing that we have this choice. So can you talk about that and how from the choice we go into creating energetically?
Yes, I mean, I think it's really important to recognize that what's happening right now, and us being here at this particular time on the planet in 2020, which will be a year, that will be reflected on for hundreds of years in the future, right? That this thing happened, this, like, the whole entire world, like, kind of came to a standstill for a moment. It's important to understand that we're here. It's not a coincidence. It's not just a random thing that we are here at this time. In my experience and belief, we're here because we're part of something that that in a way, like, needs our input, our attention, our contribution. And so if we see it as like, okay, this isn't about just like, how am I going to get through and survive. For most people, I think probably on here, they probably have, the resources in some way to navigate through this for a while, no matter what happens. And I hope that that's the case for most people. And I think the critical thing here is, can we stay in enough of a self-aware state where we recognize, like, there's something bigger than us happening, and we play an important role. And we don't know what it's going to look like, or can we be open and flexible enough to make the choice to see what happens and see how we can navigate through this, rather than, like, hold on to the familiar, hold on to the way it was and how it's supposed to be. There's going to be restrictions on travel. There's going to be, like, masks and tunnels that spray stuff onto your suit luggage, and maybe restrictions on no food on long flights and all these kind of wild things. And it's like, okay, we know that like, life as we knew it has been disrupted. It's interrupted, and it'll never be exactly the same. How much investment do we have in trying to get back to the way it was? And how much investment do we have in being a part of creating a new future that actually is not, hopefully, I mean, this is what I think we all want to see, is not a more restricted and controlled and, microchipped and vaccinated and, whatever, like, super intense kind of Big Brother kind of thing. I think there's this whole thing going on right now where everyone's like, oh wow, what is happening here? How is this all going to sort of unfold? What's our life going to look like? I think right now there's a big crossroads in the world around awareness, consciousness, just how we show up for each other as human beings, and looking at this from a more of a perspective of our humanity versus just business. Because business is going to change. It always is going to change. The most innovative, adaptive people who are most resourceful, most energized, most aware are going to see the opportunities. We're going to adapt. We're going to innovate. We're going to create new, amazing things. So are we either one of those people, or we're a person that's hanging on to the past and trying to make it get back to the way it was, and it will never go back. So it's like, the opportunity here is to drop the story, drop the attachment, unhook from it, and go, okay, that, like, we're in a universe of abundance and unlimited, truly limitless possibility. How do we need to go forward in alignment with that, and how can we tap into that awareness and that, really, the feeling that, yes, it is an abundant universe. It isn't just like a concept. We really have the possibility and opportunity. So I saw that Laura here asked a question in meditation time. What questions would you recommend asking yourself about your future to get the energy started? I think, and like one of the most valuable things about meditation is it's just unhooking from the mind altogether. So maybe you go into it just like opening yourself to allowing something beyond your thinking mind, something transcendent consciousness, to just bring to you whatever information is needed for your highest and best, and for the highest and best of the world, and just allowing whatever comes to come. And even if no thoughts come in, or no downloads of like dramatic information come, but you just feel more peaceful and more okay with the situation right now, that already is getting you from an energy poor to a more energy neutral place. But if you go into it, asking for like, please help me to, whatever, like whatever forces, God, whatever, to give me exactly what I want so that I can be more comfortable, you're screwed, right? So it's how can I be used maybe as a vessel to be a better human being, to be more kind, to be more loving, to be more compassionate to myself and to others, and just release my attachment even more to the way it's supposed to be, how it's supposed to look, and actually just open myself to being in a way used for my highest and best, and for the highest and best of the world. And if you go into like any kind of process or meditation with that, then it's like, why am I wanting to get my body more fit and more yeah. Yes, I want to look good, I want to feel good, but I want to be able to be vital and use my body for creating things in the world. Why do I want to be more self-aware? Because I want to be more conscious of my inner world and my surroundings around me, but I also want to be able to navigate and have a better sense, an intuitive sense of what to say yes to and what to say no to, what's important and what's not for my larger, purpose here. And meditation is a phenomenal way. I have if anyone who's on here wants to do my free course, just go to my website, johnamaral.com, or go to my @Dr. John Amaral on my Instagram. And in the bio, there's a link to I have a free 7-day course that you can do a bunch of exercises, which will help open up and energize things. And there's no cost or anything. So you can check that out. And that's a way to kind of navigate you through visualization, breath, energy flow, and movement patterns that will open things up.
Well, John, I can't believe it. We are already at the top of the hour. We have covered what it feels like to be in that terrified state of what are we going to do, the neutral state, which we've put as analogous to the PPP loan, and then getting us over into this place where we can be energy rich, which is where the creative aspect of letting go of what we thought the past was supposed to be, and opening ourselves up to what we want to create, and putting our talents, our resources, our creativity, our focus behind creating that as a next step.
And I will just add one more thing before we go, and that is to, even beyond what we want to create or we know we want to create, it's opening ourselves to be the vessel for what can be created through us that we don't even know yet, but opening ourselves. And that requires us to be in a high enough energy state for that to be able to happen. So yes, focus on what we want to create, but then open ourselves to what if there's something even more and bigger and more impactful that can come through us.
Yeah, that has, I can't highlight enough how much that has been my experience. So sort of this limited idea of what we think could be the best thing, when what's actually available to us is so much bigger, so much greater, and so much just more alive than whatever was there.
Beautiful. Well, Elatia, thank you for having me. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and I have an amazing afternoon here of awesome, information and people.
Thank you so much, John. I appreciate it. I'll see you again really soon.
Bye.
Bye.